Hello and welcome to my top cards of 2017 in Faeria, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of cards, creatures, structures, events, but this video is going to be my top 10 creatures that have represented in decks throughout competitive, casual, ladder, all throughout of Faeria. And yeah, it was a tough list to construct because cards that have had a lot of influence on the game have been changed in balanced patches and no longer have that same influence. So as a general rule, I'm not going to include cards in their previous form. So cards like, say, Triton Trainer, for example, which created the Blue Jump archetype, won't be featured in this list because it got changed. But maybe a card that helped Blue Jump become so dominant will take its place. Now, for the creatures, I'm going to do 10 creatures. There are so many good creatures in Faeria. It was very difficult to construct this list. I had to think of cards that have influenced the metagame, cards that have been in a lot of decks. So the rating system is going to be quite loose. If I put something at number 1, you may disagree with me, but the reason I put it up there is because maybe it's really powerful, maybe it's changed the game a lot. You guys can kind of interpret that as you will. You may not agree with some of the cards I have on my list. If you don't, be sure to drop a comment below and maybe mention some cards I might have missed. Because, like I said, squeezing so many cards into top 10 was quite difficult. But let's kick this off. Bear with me, guys. Hear me out. And let's see what I've rated as the top 10 cards of 2017 when it comes to creatures in Faeria. At number 10, I have put Skyak. Now, Skyak's a very powerful card. It's very hard to deal with if you're not playing red, if you don't have that area of effect removal, and can snowball out of control very quickly. And we've even seen archetypes being created from this card. We've had multicolour decks that focus on Aurora's creation and creating multiple Skyaks to flood the board, but also Green-Yellow Sacrifice has made tremendous use of this card as a way to increase the power of their Soul Eaters, create walls around their Bone Collectors to protect their Bone Collectors, or maybe set up Harvesters or aggressive creatures. And I feel that Skyak is only going to get better as time goes on. This is a card that has a very powerful ability and can get more support as more Faeria expansions come out. So even though now it's still a very strong card, I still feel there's a lot to see from this card in the future if it gets the right support. At number 9, we have the Maseman. But you guys didn't expect to see this one, but Maseman has been the checks and bounds for a lot of decks within the life of Faeria. Now, Maseman became very popular during the ramp meta because it was a great way to check elemental cards in the early game. We saw Yellow Tempo utilizing this card in order to check those elementals. But we've also seen Red Rush using this card as of recent as a very strong, aggressive 4/4. But even before these decks were very powerful, Maseman was a way to check Red Rush actually back in the old Angry versions when Shedding Pest, and the Hate Seed were very popular. Maseman was just a very solid creature to answer those. And Maseman, you know, he's a guy who's going to make sure those greedy decks don't get away with doing what they want. It can apply a lot of pressure. It doesn't require any lands. It has 4 life as well, so it dodges popular removal like Cypher's Wrath, Flame Burst, Wind Soldier, and Soul Drain, and demands stuff like Firebomb or combinations of removal. And this is why Maseman is such a good card. You know, 4 Faeria, 4/4, solid stats, doesn't require any lands, and you know, and it does what it says on the tin. It just gives you a good, solid creature that can challenge your opponent's board. Now, it might be a bit boring. It doesn't have any text, but its stats alone is what's carried this card to my top 10, and how it's, you know, checked the greedier metagame, but also helped rush decks like Red Rush or mid-range decks and tempo decks excel within the respective metagames. At number 8, we have the Flash Salmon. Now, Flash Salmon came in during the Oversky and has helped accelerate a slow control deck into a much faster version, and that is Green-Yellow Sacrifice. Now, traditionally, Green-Yellow Sacrifice was a slow, grindy control deck that, you know, fended off your opponent while trying to get his creatures to die and some of those big Soul Eaters. But in recent times now, we've had Flash Salmon come into the deck, using cards like Iona's Smile to tutor it, and then using it on Bone Collector to extend its power, help you fight in the mid to early game, but also cycle through your deck quicker. It's a very strong card in Yellow Rush as well. You can use this as a way to activate Kaleem's Prayer in the early game, but you can also sacrifice it with popular cards like Lord of the Waste and Demon Wrangler. So Flash Salmon's had a massive influence on the recent metagame, and I can't see this card going anywhere. It's a very powerful creature, has a lot of mobility, has haste, and it also has a great ability. When it dies, it draws a card. So you thin your deck, you cycle this card at 1 Faeria, and it's just very powerful. So like I said, I can't see this card going anywhere, and I'd expect to see this card featuring in decks in 2018. My next card on the list is Living Willow, and this is for 2 reasons. Now, the primary reason is the amount of Faeria you gain with Feed the Forest. So, you know, you need to combo this card with an event to get that Faeria acceleration, but it was usually enough to bring an opponent or a player back into the game when they were behind. Being able to play Willow Feed gives you a massive burst of Faeria. You get to thin your deck and draw a card, and then be able to react to whatever aggression or whatever pressure has been applied. And this was just a solid card to even harvest Faeria. You could harvest Faeria with it first, and then you could feed the forest after once it's done its job. Gain even more Faeria, more card draw to play cards. Now, this card is featured more in mono green and blue green ramp, especially since it's changed to Feed the Forest. Feed the Forest now costing 5 forest instead of 3 to play, so it can't be featured in many other decks other than the mono green and the blue green ramp. But another good thing about Living Willow is it's just such a sturdy taunt, and during Yellow Rush metas, Living Willow is one of the most solid creatures for fending off those Origin fanatics and those Kaleem's followers. Things have become a little bit more difficult recently, mainly because Demon Wing from the Demon Wrangler, we have the Shaitan Demon, we have the Lord of the Waste, all these really bulky creatures featuring in these rush builds, and Willow's not quite enough to fend them off. But when it comes to haste creatures, Living Willow is fantastic at dealing with them. Now, even in the older versions of Faeria, Living Willow has also been very powerful with the Gabriel enchantment. Combo the Gabriel enchantment with Living Willow, it becomes a 7/7. So you're paying 5 Faeria, 2 cards for a 7/7, and if you're using the enchantment, the event version, you also cycle as well, which is really nice. But yeah, Living Willow, very strong, solid card, great with Feed the Forest for an economy boost, but also very good at controlling those pesky little haste creatures from Yellow Rush. At number 6, we have the Wave Crash Colossus. Now, you may be thinking, why is this card on here? Now, I talked about in the intro how some of the cards that helped define archetypes have been nerfed during the course of 2017. Triton Trainer was an example I gave, and Wave Crash Colossus has come in its place because there's also another card that I would have used if it hadn't been nerfed, and that is the Prophet of the Tides. Now, Prophet of the Tides and the Triton Trainer were 2 key cards to help create the blue jump archetype, but I also feel that Wave Crash Colossus also played a massive role in that archetype being really strong. This was a creature that came down very early thanks to stuff like the Prophet of the Tides, getting those lands onto your opponent's well very quickly. You could jump and collect off your opponent's well very fast, and then slam these very cheap 7/7s down, which can be very difficult to deal with back in that meta game. And I feel like Wave Crash Colossus, played a massive role in the success of Blue Jump because it was such a cheap win condition. Being able to pay 4 Faeria for a 7/7, that's really crazy considering you're already controlling the board with your jumpers, with the old Prophet of the Tides, Aurora, being able to trade up the curve as well. Very, very powerful. So Wave Crash Colossus hits number 6 on my list because it helped Blue Jump become a very powerful archetype. But I also feel this card still has a lot of potential, especially with the Oversky Tow Ship, being able to move those lands, and Mystic Beast having a recent change allowed it to be splashed into those blue-yellow bills. So maybe Wave Crash Colossus will make its return in the future, maybe Blue Jump will, and we'll still see this be in the win condition. We'll have to see what happens with this card going into 2018. At number 5, we have another Colossus card. We have the Windstorm Colossus. Now, I rated this Colossus higher because it stuck around in the metagame longer. than the Wave Crash Colossus. Now, Windstorm Colossus was the win condition for yellow events or yellow tempo, depending on what you want to call it. And one of the most powerful things about this card is playing events was just so easy. You know, Flash Wind only cost 2 deserts back then, Kaleem's Training, very cheap events, Soul Drain, sometimes even Soul Pact, and then you could use this creature and dash it right up to your opponent's orb with that mobility. And costing 5, one more expensive than the Wave Crash Colossus, but I think that's fine because, you know, you're paying an extra 1 Faeria for that dash free, which is a pretty amazing ability if you think about it. Now, Wave Crash Colossus was one of the defining points of yellow events and tempo. A Windstorm Charger probably would have been on this list if it hadn't been nerfed at 3 Faeria. It was very powerful, but I still think Colossus was a very important part of that build. It was the win condition, right? As much like the Wave Crash Colossus, sometimes you could just win by controlling the board with the charges, with the demons, you know, with the trainings and all that. But most of the time you needed that extra little bit of push at the end, and Windstorm Colossus provides that. You know, that 7/7. It can dash as well, so you don't have to build aggressive deserts. You can build neutrals going up the one side of the wells, then dash it up later on. And this card, you know, I still like this card. I've been using it in a red-yellow events build, which is more of a control-based build, which I did a deck doctor on. You should check that out. It's on this channel. So if you'd like to use Windstorm Colossus, that could be a cool deck to try out. Will we see Windstorm Colossus going into 2018? I don't know. It depends if we get more event cards in future expansions. And if we do, you know, Windstorm Colossus is still going to be a very powerful win condition. But then again, we could see the return of yellow events or tempo, depending on how the metagame shifts. At number 4, we have the Crackform Beast. An entire archetype was based around this card. And the beauty of Crackform Beast was you could create a mid-range deck that didn't require any specific synergies. The red-green basically used the best of red cards and the best of green cards. You got the power-ups from green, as well, and you also got the teleportation from green as well, Sagami Grovecaller before it got nerfed. And then you had all the removal events like the Cypher's Wrath, the Flame Burst, as well as the strong red mid-range creatures like Axe Grinder and Ground Shaker. And then to top it all off, you had this Crackform Beast which could dash, deal damage, split around, you could combo removal, and also empower your creatures. So Crackform Beast helped shape an entire archetype. We don't see much Crackform anymore, but it was a dominant deck back in its time, and it was very difficult to beat, and the only decks that could really compete with it were yellow events, which we just covered with Colossus, and then blue jump, which we covered with the Wave Crash Colossus. So Crackform Beast was such a powerful card, such an influential card back in its time, and maybe we'll see a return of it in the future as red-green expands. We had the Salamander from the Oversky. Rakoa and Wrangler got powered up recently, got buffed. So Crackform Beast could see a return in the future, but it definitely had a huge influence on the metagame during 2017. At number 3, we have the Demon Wrangler. Do you guys expect me to pick Demon Wrangler for at least this list of number 3? Maybe not, maybe so. And the reason is I feel that Demon Wrangler has just had so much influence on the game. You know, Demon Wrangler is a powerful sacrifice creature. If this card was only used in Green-Yellow Sacrifice, I probably wouldn't have picked it. But because it's been used in Yellow Rush in the recent times, that's why it's made the list, because I feel this card is absolutely insane in Yellow Rush. It's especially with the Flash Salmon as well. If you combo those two cards together, being able to create a 5/2 flying creature that early on in the game is so powerful. And Demon Wrangler was responsible for a lot of the Yellow Rush players being able to overwhelm their opponent in the early game to a point where they can't respond anymore. It's like being able to play like Flash Salmon, zip it up, Demon Wrangler into a 5/2. Opponent's like, wow, you know, this is a 5/2 I have to deal with. And then the Shaitan Demon comes down behind it, or maybe a Lord of the Wastes. You know, there's a lot. Sacrifice has become a very powerful component of Yellow Rush in recent times, and it's also a very powerful component of Green-Yellow Sacrifice. And Demon Wrangler allows you to turn those small creatures like the Village Elder into real threats. A 5/2 can challenge a lot of strong mid-range creatures within Faeria. You also get the 2/1 as well that can collect Faeria. I really rate this card. I think it's very powerful. I think maybe a little overlooked when it comes to its power level. I feel this card has pushed Yellow Rush into a much more aggressive and stronger variant than we've seen in a long time, and it's also just a very solid card in the green-yellow sacrifice builds. Does it deserve to be at number 3? Maybe not, maybe so, I don't know, that's up to you guys to decide, but I feel I've rated it this high simply because of how much influence and how much power it has given Yellow Rush. At number 2, we have the Ground Shaker. How could I not include this card? I don't know a red deck that doesn't use this card. Maybe the red events that only runs 3 creatures anyway, but Ground Shaker always showing up in red variants or just red decks. This card has been shaking up Faeria for a very, very long time. Even in 2016, this card was incredibly powerful, and I don't see it going anywhere. I can't see there being a better card for 6 Faeria than Ground Shaker. It's a 5/6, so it's a very sturdy creature. It has a gift ability that deals 1 damage to all enemies, including your opponent's orb, and in a color that has a lot of removal pieces, you can combo removal very easily, or Ground Shaker can kill stuff that has 6 life after it's been played, because it'll do that damage, and then it'll even live to tell the tale as long as it has less than 6 attack. Ground Shaker, it's just such a solid card, and if you've watched my deck doctors, especially with any red, I always come to Ground Shaker, I'm like, oh look, it's Ground Shaker, he's in this deck, what a surprise, craft this card, it's great. And you should, it's going to be in red decks for a very long time. I can't see there being anything better, that they can print anything better than this, unless you print Big Ground Shaker, which does 2 damage to all enemies, and is a 6/7, but even then, Ground Shaker, very solid card, gonna have a bright future in 2018, not only in just red decks, but any kind of hybrid deck that involves the red color. Last but not least, we have my number 1 pick for the top creature of 2017. That is the Azura Skywhale. This card is crazy good. This is an amazing win condition for land ramp based decks. It's mobile, it's bulky as a 6/6, and it also has the incredible ability of swallowing a creature. And swallow is such a strong mechanic. It's a way to control the board, it's a way to stop your opponent in their tracks, and it's a way to apply pressure as well. Skywhales have been terrorizing the ladder for a very long time, and they're very hard to deal with. Even after they were nerfed, they were once 6/8s and they were nerfed to 6/6s. They're much easier to manage now, but even then, Skywhales are just very solid win conditions. They're kind of the replacement for the Colossus. You know, the Wave Crash Colossus and the Windstorm Colossus were once the big daddies of win conditions in Faeria. Then Oversky came out and Skywhale became probably the premium number 1 win condition that any deck can run, as long as it runs the land ramp build. So obviously a Yellow Rush isn't going to get used to this, they're never going to build 8 lands, but we've all seen how powerful a blue-green ramp is. Now, I'm curious to see what will happen to this card going into 2018 and any future expansions that come out. Will there be better win conditions than Azura Skywhale, or will Azura Skywhale continue to be the most powerful, probably one of the most snowbally cards in Faeria? But Skywhale, very strong. If you're looking for a win condition for your land-based deck, then look no further, because this card will win you games, it will control the board, it's just absolutely fantastic. And that wraps up my top creatures of 2017. There's a lot of creatures in this game to go through. I had to narrow it down. There are a few cards that I would like to have added, Manta Rider being one of them. I had a list, actually. I had a long list of cards which I could have picked from. I wanted to add Axe Grinder, but I ended up going with Ground Shaker instead. Wood Elemental as well, I feel is very strong because, you know, it helped accelerate these land ramp decks. Mystic Beast was another one on there. Bone Collector. So there's a lot of cards I would have loved to add to my top 10, but it was hard enough picking them out, so I decided to go with this list. You guys might agree or disagree with me, but be sure to let me know in the comments. Maybe you could give me your top 10 cards of 2017, or at least creatures, until we move on to the other card types. So we've had creatures now, these are the top 10. We're going to look at the events and structures, which will be covered in top 5, because there's not as many events or structures in the game. There's far more creatures to pick from, so I'm going to narrow it down for the events and structures, because I'm afraid I'll just be picking stuff because I just need to fill up the list. So next we're going to have events, and then we are going to have structures. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, drop a subscribe to keep up to date of when our content goes live. Be sure to check out some of our other videos: Deck Doctor, Deck Pilot, Card Spotlight, and the monthly Cup VODs. So until next time, guys, I hope you enjoyed your Christmas, and I hope you have a fantastic New Year. Take care, and see you next time.